the Erica Show. I'm your host, Erica King, and the guest of episode 52 is Colin from Protocol Labs. I have been waiting for this moment for a long time, and thank you, Colin, for being here. Hi.
Hi, Erica. Thank you for hosting me, and please call me Protocolin.
Oh, Protocolin? Is that your nickname?
Oh, that's my nickname.
Oh, that's great. That really says a lot about yourself and what you do in this space. But before we get in, can you please do a short intro of yourself and what you do for Protocol Labs?
Sure. So my name is Protocolin, and my role is I'm in charge of ecosystem growth for the Filecoin network. Filecoin is the storage network of Web3, as well as the IPFS network, which is the content and data platform of Web3, and libp2p, which is the underlying networking library of Web3. So we lead a large team that helps expand the use and adoption of Filecoin, IPFS, and libp2p.
Wow. Yeah, I'm always in awe of what all that you do in the space, especially in the Filecoin network. And, it's pretty very infrastructure level too. So I want to hear more about how you contribute and what your current activities are in this space. But before we get in, I always do this to all my interviewees, but how did you get into this space in crypto? Because I think everyone wants to hear about the crypto entrance story. And is there something that you can share with us? How you got introduced to the Filecoin project and everything. I'd love to hear more about it.
So I joined crypto in 2017, which was, relatively, recent compared to some of the OGs and that follow you and your podcast. I was introduced to Juan through a really good friend of mine named Ryan Zurrer, who was at the time a partner at Polychain Capital.
I know.
And yeah, that's great. Yeah, Ryan's one of my really good friends from college, and we go way, way back. And he dragged me by the ear. He said, I don't care, what you're doing today, you're going to meet Juan Benet because they are absolutely inventing the future of the web. And I was just super compelled by the mission to upgrade the web, to make it faster, safer, more resilient to attack, and more open. That Juan's really was his vision for IPFS and Filecoin. And the other reason I really jumped into it is at the time, and at least in 2017, there was it was mostly made up of researchers and developers. Mm-hmm. And I come from a business background. I used to work at McKinsey as an investor at Bain Capital. I've done an MBA at Stanford, and I was the CEO of a previous company. And so I thought I could bring a bit of a different skill set to help really accelerate the adoption of Web3 from Web 2 and accelerate that transition. And so there's a lot I had to learn, like crypto economics and open source ecosystem development, and Juan and the team were great teachers there. But I think there's this emerging category of folks that can bring a different perspective as Web3 becomes mainstream.
Wow, what a story. I'm also from Stanford, so we have many commonalities here. So,
great.
Yeah, amazing. I think, as you mentioned, mentioned before, the entrance from Web 2 to Web 3 is, I think, the topic from now on. I think people are more and more coming in as a space, and that people like you are, needed because I think you've gone through the same experience, and I think it's very well appreciated. So, thank you for sharing this story with us. You mentioned a little bit about Filecoin and Protocol Labs, but how would you explain the project in simple words? In the official blog post, it does explain Filecoin as an open source cloud storage marketplace, protocol, and an incentive layer. And that's a lot of things combined in one sentence. So maybe can you break it down a little bit and simplify a little bit for us?
Yeah, of course. So I'll even broaden the definition of what we're trying to achieve with Filecoin. And so there's 4 components to it, right? So Filecoin is first and foremost a verifiable storage network. Think of it like Airbnb for storage, right? Mm. So in the before Airbnb, you could only go to a couple of hotel chains to go stay in a place. And similarly, there's only a few cloud storage providers like AWS, Google Cloud that you can really rely on today. And so what Filecoin does is it opens up into a marketplace just like Airbnb, where data centers can join the network all over the world. There are over 4,000 of them on the Filecoin network today. And together, they provide the reliability, the geographic diversity, the price competitiveness of the larger cloud storage providers. So as a cloud storage network, Filecoin launched in October of 2020. We have over 16 exabytes of storage on the network today, which is about 1% of total cloud storage in the world.
Wow.
And almost 60 petabytes of data stored. These are 50 million NFTs, all sorts of Web 2 archival data sets, and other use cases that we'll go into during the podcast to hear. So that's first and foremost is like a storage network. 2 is Filecoin is a retrieval network, right? So you can think of it a decentralized CDN. And so this is basically ways where you can like distribute content closest to where you need it, whether that's a major city or a rural area, and become really competitive as a content delivery network. 3, Filecoin is launching programmable applications, smart contracts later this year. And so with the Filecoin virtual machine, you'll be able to, program all sorts of new use cases like in the future. And 4th, Filecoin is building in computation. So this is basically putting in compute over the data that's stored on Filecoin, which will be a late 2022, 2023 project, which will open up a whole variety of use cases for the network as well. So storage, retrieval, programmable applications, and computation.
That's a lot. That's a lot. How many? May I ask, like, how many employees are in the company? Because it seems like a lot to do at the same time. So,
yeah. So I think in Protocol Labs separately, I think we have maybe 250 or something like that. But the reality is, like, there's like dozens of other major companies that contribute to the Filecoin network. I lead a separate company called Outer Core that is purely dedicated to the ecosystem development. The Filecoin Foundation is a force to be reckoned with. NFT.storage is making Filecoin very usable for NFTs. Starboard in Singapore is exposing all sorts of metrics on the Filecoin network to make it really easy to understand for various stakeholders. IPFS Force has developed an alternate implementation called Venus. ChainSafe has developed this alternate implementation called Forest. And so it's really not just like, it's really dozens of companies that are contributing. In fact, I think as of last week, we had over 9,000 developers make GitHub commits to one of the Filecoin repos, which is incredible.
Wow, that's amazing. So you've got this entire network, like holistic, awesome network, deep network as well of ecosystem partners, as well as the, Protocol Labs itself. In your experience in Protocol Labs, what made it so special for you? Like maybe on a personal level and also on a career level, because, I think a lot of projects really do want to be differentiated. And, of course, I think Filecoin has many infrastructure like necessities that it makes it special already. But, from your personal experience, what made it really stick to you, right? Would love to hear your story on that.
Yeah, so I think the mission first and foremost really drew me in to create kind of a decentralized alternative to the large cloud storage providers to make storage verifiable. So when you know you're accessing a specific file, to eliminate things like fake news and things of the like, and to make cloud storage so compelling that it's less than 1% the price of traditional cloud storage. I mean, it opens up all sorts of use cases. 95% of data that gets created is thrown away. A lot of that is because of cost competitiveness. And so we think we can open up whole new markets for data storage on the Filecoin network. So the mission itself was super compelling. And then from kind of a company network structure perspective, really you can almost think of Protocol Labs as a network of companies versus a company itself. There's a super big push towards entrepreneurship and decentralization. So rather than hiring people into like some central company like Google, we encourage folks, especially entrepreneurs, to go start their own companies within the Filecoin network to be important contributors to the IPFS Filecoin Lib P2P stack. And so that kind of like, I was a prior founder before. I really didn't want to work for like a big company. I wanted to do my own thing. And the mentality that whenever you have an idea, you can go start something within the ecosystem and develop that into a major company, that really resonated with me.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. I think it really does fit with the Web3 vision as well. As companies become more decentralized and more trusting other ecosystem partners, it just makes the web much more bigger and the impact bigger as well. So yeah, that vision really does align with me as well. So had to point that out. Thanks for sharing your insight.
Of course.
Yeah. So in Korea, for example, I'm based in Seoul, by the way, and yes, Filecoin is listed on Upbit and, for example, like centralized exchanges. And I think the Korean community does see like the Filecoin like as a coin as well. And I just wonder like how it can be used in the actual protocol. What is the what's the purpose of it, right? And how does it tie into the whole ecosystem? Can you explain a little bit more on that? That'd be really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so Filecoin is really like it powers the whole Filecoin economy, right? And so if you are a client and you want to store data on the Filecoin network, you would buy Filecoin and use it as the currency to store large or small amounts of data on the Filecoin network, right? Storage providers or data centers, there are tons in Korea. They not only earn Filecoin for storing data, but they also post Filecoin as collateral to ensure that the data that they're storing is not being lost. And if it gets lost, then there's a penalty associated with that. For retrieval providers, whenever you want to retrieve a file from the Filecoin network, there's a similar fee to like AWS or something like that, and you pay that in Filecoin. And then all sorts of developers that are developing, amazing applications or developer tooling. There are, I think, over 350 legitimate, like, high-powered applications building on Filecoin today. They all use Filecoin as their currency, and they're often incentivized by Filecoin, by the Filecoin Foundation, to help get off the ground as independent organizations and applications as well. So you can really think of this whole economy as being powered by Filecoin. In fact, there's starting to be ways where you can even purchase hard drives in Filecoin. And so even like the underlying inputs can be potentially transacted in Filecoin in the future.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, so there's a ton of use cases for the Filecoin. It just ties in the whole economy together, which is great. Right. And I think for the future developments that are about to happen, the exciting milestones you're about to hit, as I think you shared before, that would be also reflective of how it will expand the use case of Filecoin itself. So that's amazing. Speaking of data centers, I was, as like somebody who's based in Korea, you want to participate in the network, how would you, go about, say, like, how would you reach out? What is the best way? Because I think a lot of Koreans find it difficult sometimes to reach out to projects abroad. So in Filecoin's perspective, what would be like the ideal, I guess, approach, method, or process? I think a lot of people would love to hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I answer that, I really believe Korea could be a total full stack player in the Filecoin ecosystem. China was like a very early adopter. I was in China in 2019, meeting with a ton of folks. There was already a lot of early momentum. And I really think Korea can emerge as an ecosystem where there are storage providers, lots and lots of applications and developers building on top of the ecosystem, ecosystem funds that are investing into the storage providers and developers and things in the ecosystem. There are a lot of those in China. There are a few in Korea that are emerging, and a whole bunch of like storage clients and decentralized applications. So I think it could be like a full stack kind of economy. We started kind of a bit of a localization strategy in Q3 of last year, making sure there's lots of opportunities in like locally to engage the Filecoin network. So I'll list a few here that might be good for folks to reach out to. So there's the Filecoin Korean community group on Telegram, or you can join our Filecoin Slack channel at filecoin.io/Slack and join the #Phil-Korea Slack channel. And so those are two really good broad community groups there. If you want to learn about Filecoin updates, I would suggest Filecoin's Navor blog and the Blockchain Hub blog. And so those are two blogs that track the Filecoin activity pretty closely. And there's a whole bunch of events and local collaborations. For example, the Crypto Soul, obviously has been developing the Korean community. I think you guys do tons of events and online events as well. So that's just amazing. We have a whole bunch of ways to engage. You can engage in like Data Gravity, which is a referral system to get more storage on Filecoin, notary applications, Filecoin Plus Data Cap, the IPFS Industry Summit in I think it's the Korea station is pretty active as well. And then if you're a storage provider, there is a Korean storage provider working group that provides support for all sorts of storage providers in Korea. And so, data centers like Tenet, Meta Blockchain, Dataline, MeSnab, a whole bunch of those participate in that working group. And so you can apply to join that working group, and there's a whole bunch of resources that, other storage providers provide each other to help you grow. So those are pretty good starting points. And then, of course, you can always reach out to me or Isabella or kind of our Asia working group on Filecoin Slack.
Thank you for sharing. There's so many resources to reach out. And I think all in Web3, I think the most important task for the projects and people like me as myself to do is to find the right gateway, make the right easy gateway for people to be on board and get on track, right? So yeah, thanks for sharing that, because I think a lot of people would love to hear this. And you mentioned about China, and I was going to ask about China because it's so big, it has a huge community of Filecoin, and so. Just curious about, you were in China too, so I would love to hear your experience in China and how, that was able to be developed, and just, that'd be wonderful to hear.
Yeah, totally. So I think IPFS was really popular in China dating way back into 2014, 2015.
Yeah.
And so since, Filecoin is kind of the top layer incentive system for IPFS, it was a natural extension for many folks in China. I know during DevCon 2 in Shanghai, Juan kind of announced the Filecoin vision, and that was a major catalyst to engage a whole new swath of the Ethereum community into Filecoin. And so that was a really important moment. And then, all throughout the development of Filecoin in the various test nets, the Chinese storage provider and application community, they were super engaged and got to know it very early. And so by the time mainnet launched, they had already been participating for 2 or 3 years and launched with a really big bang. And so, they were very early adopters of Filecoin, but we see, Korea, Japan, North America, a lot of these regions are catching up and really having explosive growth, both in terms of developing applications and providing storage to the Filecoin network. So I just see China as an early adopter, but it's first of many regions that'll get to that scale.
Yeah, China is definitely a huge success case for Filecoin, and I think that would be a benchmark, be a benchmark into other countries as well. So I really wanted to ask it because it was so big, and everywhere I go, it was everywhere, and they're talking about the Chinese Filecoin community. So was really curious about that. And for me as a community builder in Korea, that's always a huge, interest for me too. And I think ecosystem development, as you probably would resonate, is so hard to do. It's very difficult. And for you, in developing this community and also having business partners, for example, what are some of the, I wouldn't say pros and cons, but difficulty, challenges that you face on the way? I think generally in Web3, I think that would be very useful for people to hear, not just for Filecoin, but just for Web3 in general. What would you say were some of the challenges that you felt, and what could be what could be done better? Maybe what? Can you share some of that story if you can?
Yeah, of course. Our ultimate goal is to completely transition a Web 2 world to a Web 3 world, right? And so I think some of the major challenges happen when we look at Web 3 with blinders on. And of course, we're very technical. We've been in Web 3. We understand decentralized tech for a really long time. And so when you have blinders on and you're in this world, you kind of forget that there are billions of people that are used to doing things a certain way, and millions of developers that are used to a certain set of tools to accomplish their, develop applications in the Web 2 world. And so the real, challenge that I find is making sure that we can appeal to Web 2 individuals, developers, businesses, so we can actively transition them to a Web 3 world, right? And so if you're a super technical developer, you can run a Filecoin node and you can store lots of things and do some amazing things, but a developer in the Web 2 world doesn't need to know everything under the hood if we want to really engage them. And so, I really think the developer tooling layer is super, super important for networks like Filecoin, Ethereum, and others. A few recent examples in Filecoin network, NFT.storage has been an awesome developer tool. If you're an NFT builder with a couple lines of code, you can content address with IPFS, back up to Filecoin forever, and make it really, really easy on yourself. Web3.storage, very similar. You can either drag and drop files or run a couple lines of code as an application. And Estuary is another really, really good one that makes it really, really easy for developers to use Filecoin, but without having to understand all the components and having to choose individual storage providers. You can kind of just put some criteria and the rest happens under the hood. So, in our ecosystem approach, we tend to look at these things called like ecosystem multipliers, where if you develop one thing, you can open up a whole new set of use cases. And so developer tools are one of them, making IPFS and Filecoin native in the browser as it is with Brave and Opera, and hopefully Chromium and others in the future. That's another ecosystem multiplier that can open up hundreds of millions of active users, right? And so those are some of the things that we tend to think about and try and focus on.
That totally makes sense. Oh, wow. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. I'm always having this question, and that really kind of hit me on the spot. So that's great. So you mentioned a little bit about NFTs too. And I think the interest for NFT storage is becoming larger and larger. And you recently had a hackathon as well relating to this. And there was a separate NFT, I guess, track or partner and specializing in that area too. So you do have a focus on NFTs and focusing on that, burgeoning area. How's Filecoin meaningful to, this field, and what are you trying to make, I guess, more headway into the NFT space?
Definitely. So, an important milestone that just happened today actually was that NFT storage crossed 50 million NFTs on Filecoin. Now, there are also more NFTs than that on Filecoin separately, but NFT.storage itself has placed 50 million NFTs, on Filecoin, which represents, about 271 terabytes of data, which is really, really incredible, right? And so it's super important for NFTs to be content addressed with IPFS. It prevents things like rug pulling. IPFS has this really unique feature called a content identifier, where any unique piece of content in the world can be boiled down into one cryptographic hash on IPFS, which makes it very, very different than the traditional Web 2 world, where you can have 15 different copies of a cat and you would never really know if one was different, because there's no way to boil that down, right? So it's super important for NFTs so they don't get rug pulled and that you can assign a specific ownership, right? And then Filecoin is really the way where you can store NFTs in a reliable way for, the foreseeable future, right? If you store an NFT on AWS, even if the NFT is minted on Ethereum, it's still being stored in some centralized way.
Right.
And so if that central server goes down, these are really expensive pieces of content and you lose that data. You lose the actual asset, right? And so Filecoin is a way where you can distribute that storage across many, many storage providers all over the world, don't have a single point of failure, and be able to renew some of those deals for forever, really. And so NFT.storage makes that all really easy under the hood.
Oh, wow. That totally makes sense too. And I think as the space grows more and more, and I think NFTs are here for good for sure. So I think the importance of NFT storage is going to be it's going to be more emphasized. And right now you've touched a very important milestone. So congratulations on that again. There was also news with collaboration with Chainlink as well. There are many really good news related to Filecoin or any other project for that matter. And I think people wonder, what is the actual implication of that collaboration? So, and usually articles don't really mention exactly how it's meaningful, right? So can you kind of go through what does that mean in terms of collaborating with Chainlink, for example? And I would love to hear on your end, what does it mean?
Yeah, totally. So, I think Filecoin is really trying to be the storage network for Web3. So whether you're developing smart contracts on Solana or Ethereum or Near or whatever, right? Like Filecoin wants to be there for you as the underlying storage layer. You don't have to choose between one network or another to have a reliable way of storing your files on a network like Filecoin, or use content addressing like IPFS, right? And so we made a lot of headway. Like had a big partnership with Dapper, where a lot of their NFTs are stored on Filecoin. We actually recently made a tremendous headway into the Solana ecosystem. We integrated with Metaplex, which is this amazing developer tool. And, applications like Magic Eden and Holoplex are all using Filecoin for things like NFTs, which is great. Chainlink is a really interesting one. In fact, like Sergey and Juan go way, way back as two founders in the space that were very early.
Sure.
And so basically the way the joint kind of ecosystem works is you can have hybrid smart contracts that combine decentralized storage, or decentralized oracles, which Chainlink provides, and then Filecoin's decentralized storage in a single application, right?
Yeah.
And so those hybrid smart contracts leverage code running on chain with data and computation from outside the blockchain, which is kind of like off chain. And so those two together, it creates all sorts of like off chain opportunities between Filecoin and an Oracle network like Chainlink that a lot of developers are leveraging. In fact, like we are one of the major participants in Chainlink's annual hackathon. And I think there were I want to say 500 developers that participated using Chainlink and Filecoin. Ooh. And I think they made 40 or 50 major projects with that hackathon, but I think 9 or 10 of those teams followed on and they entered the Tachyon Accelerator and then raised seed rounds afterwards. And so there's a lot of developers that are not only experimenting with the joint functionality, but also progressing into accelerators so they can start businesses, raise capital, and kind of reach new heights.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. I think the meaning of actual true meaning of hackathons and the ultimate goal is to basically lead them into accelerators and make them kind of help them bloom right into real projects out there. So that's one of a very good example of how it really bloomed into a full project. So that's great. That's great to hear. So let's go back more on the milestones that we're gonna look for into 2022. We're still at the beginning, so I think we have some time. But can you kind of organize maybe or share what milestones that you're looking forward to in 2022 for Protocol Labs, Filecoin, IPFS? Yeah, we'd love to hear about exciting things that are about to come.
Definitely. So it's a really exciting time. I think a few things I'm super, super excited about. One is the launch of the Filecoin virtual machine, or FVM. If you want to learn about it, you can go to fvm.filecoin.io. Hold on, did I get that right? Sorry, filecoin.io. fvm.filecoin.io. Yeah, that's right. So you can learn all about it there. So we're launching basically smart contracts on Filecoin, which makes all sorts of programmable applications really, really possible on Filecoin. It extends the possibilities of what you can do with storage in a way that will never really be the same again, right? And introduce a whole bunch of DeFi type utility onto the Filecoin blockchain as well. Right. Yeah. And so it'll be much, much easier to do all sorts of unique things with storage and with data and with decentralized finance on top of the Filecoin chain. And so, there's all sorts of specs and timelines on the website. Check it out. It's really, really big deal for Filecoin, and we'll kind of move it into its next phase of real global utility. I would say that's one. Two is improved retrieval performance. So there's all sorts of CDN type retrieval market applications that are being developed. And you can check out retrieval.market as the website to learn all about some of the teams that are contributing to this. And so this will really put Filecoin on par with some major CDNs in the Web2 world, and will make it much, much faster and cheaper to retrieve files that are popular in local areas. That could be rural area in Africa. It could be a major city like Seoul, right? And then finally, I think there'll be much more vertical adoption of Filecoin in specific verticals. So NFT.storage was a great use case where one specific developer tool made it super easy for a whole bunch of other developers to adopt the underlying tech. So I could see things like metaverse.storage, video.storage, audio.storage, you know, all sorts of other different developer tools that will make sure that like Filecoin and IPFS are default in the development stack for things like the metaverse or video use cases, etc.
Wow, what a full year. I think that, you know, FVM is going to make huge headlines. And I think, you know, it can spur a lot of new projects out there, especially like for hackathons and so forth. I'm sure it's coming up. And there's also Filecoin Summit coming up. Is that announced yet? Not yet.
I believe it's going to be announced soon, but yeah, it'll be,
it'll happen.
Yeah, it'll be in Singapore. It'll be led by an incredible ecosystem partner that has been in the Filecoin ecosystem for many, many years. It'll be in August, and it's just going to be incredible. It's going to have like, you know, folks from all over Asia participate. And so I'll hold off on the announcement until the website's up and everyone's announced, but stay tuned.
Okay, and I'll probably be there as well. So
great.
Looking forward to exciting year for Filecoin, and you know what a journey has been for the project, and really a lot of respect for you because you've been in, you know, a pinnacle in like leading the ecosystem growth development as well. And I know how hard that is, so like I have mad respect for you. So thanks for keeping up, you know, all the hard work, and looking forward to more of your, you know, achievements in the future. So thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, and just a huge thank you to you, Erica, but also like the whole Korean ecosystem community that has contributed from like, you know, spinning up data centers and storage providers on Filecoin to developers, to events, to news like you contribute. I mean, it's just like one of the linchpins of the Filecoin global community, and I'm just super excited to see where the Korean community can evolve in 2022. So thank you so much for being such an important part of it.
Thank you. I also hope that this year will be a huge push for the Korean community for Filecoin. So looking forward to that as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Erica.